you to take things out piece by piece. So first, lay out your towel if you haven't already. Ideally, you have a towel or you've got carpet in front of you, and you are going to take everything out. We'll undress our kits one thing at a time. So the first item is perhaps your most important item. It is a needle. It is this really thin, I'm going to kind of hold it up to the screen. It's like a little piece of metal. It looks almost like nothing. This is a needle. We'll show you how to use it. This will run away from you. It will. So never leave it unattended. If you're not using it, we're going to use it in the beginning and then we won't use it for a while till the end. Keep it in your bag, zipped up, because you'll need this. And we can always get you a new one. I know a couple different substitute hacks that you can use. So yeah, that is that. Now there's 2 threads. When you get out the threads, one thread is very soft. Do not do anything with the very soft thread. Leave it exactly as it is. Do not unravel it. Just set it to the side. You don't need to touch it until the end of this whole process. You can take out your beads, set those to the side. They're going to be pre-strung, most likely. Some of you might have a bunch of free beads in your bag, but some of you it might look like, oh, hey, my mala's already done. Bad news. Not already done. You have work to do. So the other string is a little bit more tough. You're going to notice it's actually a nylon. It has a heavier, tougher feel. And this is the thread that goes in between each bead. So I'm going to hold this up and you can see there are knots that we're going to tie between every single bead of the mala. This is the thread and you can start to unravel it. Remember, it's the tough thread, the nylon thread. So once you unravel this nylon thread, you're going to find most likely that there is already one knot in it. It's just a really long piece of string folded over, and then at one end, there's a pre-tied knot for you. Now, it's our experience that some people don't have a knot pre-tied in their string. Do not worry. It's a very simple knot to tie, and I can explain it if anybody needs it. But for now, we're just holding on to this knot. Let's all go to the opposite end of this nylon thread, which is a loop. You can go all the way to the opposite end. And you see there's a loop. Because this string is just, like I said, it's a big long piece of string doubled over and knotted so that there's a knot at one end and there's a loop at the other end. Now, here's where the needle comes into play. Hopefully, and if anybody is missing your needle for any reason, I hope that's not the case, just type it in the chat box to myself or Blaine, and we can help you troubleshoot. In the meantime, we may have to get you a new needle, but I have had that happen before. We hope that's not the case. So, but we're human beings and, it happens. So this is the needle, remember, this little metal thing. And you're going to take one end of your needle. I'm trying to make it so you can see this in the screen. One end. And put that end of the needle through the loop. So with the needle and your thread, you've got loop to loop. But what we're ultimately going to do is you're going to take a bead, and let me just get a bead out so I have one. You'll take a bead, one bead at a time, and you'll put it on both ends of your needle. Okay, so I've put the bead on both ends of the needle, and I'm going to let it drop. And you can see all I do is I'm going to send the bead onto the thread. So here's where I'm going to quick pause. There's 2 types of you. Some of you have all one type of bead. Like the bead I have in front of me, it's all rose quartz. So you don't have to worry about what beads go in what pattern. You can just start stringing all 108 beads directly onto the string using the method I just showed you. Those of you who have different color beads and you want to create a pattern, you might have a little bit more work cut out for you if you want to decide what beads go where. There's no required way that you string this. You can do it intuitively. You can create a structured pattern. You can do whatever works with you. And this first round of creating the mala, we are not tying any knots. That comes after we string all 108 beads. So the knot tying is next. The only knot you have in your string right now is the one at the end. So those of you who have your beads pre-strung, like on these, this is just how beads are sold. They come on strings. So here's a trick to make this go faster if you're gonna string them all the same, is that you cut the end, right? You gotta use a scissors or manually untie the knot at the end of your strand. And then you take your needle into the first bead, and then you take your needle right away into the second bead, and maybe the third bead, and maybe the fourth bead, and then pull them all off together onto your nylon thread. It goes really fast that way. People are always like, how are you done already? And usually that's why. I've just chucked all my beads onto the string. Don't even worry about your guru bead. That was the last thing in your bag. Leave it in your bag. It's the bead that's bigger than all the others. It's a different color. It's different. Put that back in your bag with your tassel. You won't need that until the end. You do not string that onto the thread. The only thing we're stringing right now are these beads. So you're basically, when you start the stringing process, you're starting at one end, right next to the guru bead and the tassel, and you're stringing all the way down. So bead 54 would be the bead 54 and 55. Those are the beads at the back of your neck if you were wearing it like a necklace. And then you string all the way back to the guru bead. I just want to make sure nobody strung their guru bead. Leave that in the bag. Because there's 108 of the beads, and then the guru bead is so confusing when we talk about it. But I'll say it one more time just in case you didn't catch this. The guru bead is technically the 109th bead, but it's not counted. It's the teacher. It reminds you that you've made it all the way around. So we don't use that until after all the beads are strung, all the knots are tied, and we're ready to finish the mala. That's when we use the guru bead. So yes, if you're timing it out so it's like the 27th bead, or you could do patterns of 9 or patterns of 3, you can literally count from one end as you string. That starts here and it goes all the way around and back to here. In terms of like in the tradition of mala making, there's no like this pattern means, oneness. This pattern means Shiva energy. Not so much. But what you can do is either let your intuition guide you. Like I remember my first kit, I used fluorite, which is multicolored, or if you have Amazonite, that's another multicolored pack, but they're all like the same stone. I just would grab one out of the kit, like whatever stone needed to go on next went on the kit, and I just did it that way. But if you're one of those people who wants like a pattern, one great pattern, and you kind of got to make sure that you have enough, is here's our little drawing here. So this is a mala. So we've got our tassel here at the bottom. And these straight sections are sections of 9. So on each side of the guru bead, you're going to have 9 and then a section of 3. 9, section of 3. 9, section of 3. 9. So there's 4 sections of 9 on each side with sections of 3 in between. And then right over the base of your neck or the back of your neck, that section is 12. And so again, working with these multiples of 3 is also a super sacred number, really powerful. And so you can utilize that. But that's one of the most common patterns that I've seen. Or you can just use your intuition. Another way, and this would more apply if you had a prosperity mala kit where you had lots of different beads, but you can also think about stringing like 7 beads of the same color in a chunk, and then do another chunk of 7 somewhere else on the mala. 7 is a really sacred number in our tradition. There are 7 chakras, so these are the energy centers of the body. And so that, I've done malas that just have a spot of 7 like right here on the side. I'll do like 9 and then 7 and then do the rest all of the same. Sometimes this process takes some people a really long time. Blaine, how long did your first mala take you? Tell us.
10 days.
My first mala took me like 2 hours. So and it doesn't mean anything about you in particular. It just is what it is.
Or
So
maybe it does. Now
That's
I
why I
can
like
do
doing
it
this
in less than
workshop.
an hour, but maybe 45 minutes.
This
But
is
my
why
first one, Burke is still amazed. If I do a mala and I'm done in like an hour, he's like, huh? How did you do that so fast? Because all he remembers is the first time it took me like 10 days.
And so it's important to remember that the whole process, this is all living yoga. So if you find yourself getting frustrated at any point, remember, we're talking about vibration. This is the vibration that you're putting into your mala, your spiritual tool. So maybe take a step back, take a deep breath, walk away for 1 to 9 days, and then finish your mala. Or come back to it. Some of you will finish tonight, and some of you, it'll take a little bit of time. So to recap, one more time, continue doing what you're doing if this does not apply to you. We've got one end of our string, and I've got one bead already on here. There's my knot at the end, and on the other end of my string, I've got my needle. And what I did with the needle to get it on is I have my loop at that opposite end of the nylon string, and I take one end of the needle and I push it through the loop so that I've got loop on loop action. If you don't have a knot in your long, make sure first of all it's the nylon thread, not the really soft thread. The soft thread is your tassel, and the nylon thread is what we're threading onto. So there's no special technique. If you don't have a knot in one end, just double it up. And then if you know what an overhand knot is, that's what we're tying. For those of you Girl Scout or Boy Scouts in the room, I totally was a Girl Scout, so I know these names. But essentially you take the two ends, and there's no knot there, and you just make a loop, and then you take the end and bring it just through the loop that you made. And you just tie a knot just like that. And that's just your knot. And you want to leave at the end, everybody probably has about, I'm also really bad at measuring things like this. I don't know, this is probably like 3 inches, 3 inches of slack at the very end, roughly. You just don't want the very end, like the part where you're not sliding beads onto it, you don't want it to be too short because we use this slack to tie our tassel at the very end, so that's the importance of that. Once you've got that knot in, you've got your needle and your loop, and you're taking your beads, threading them on one at a time, or you're doing this super stealth mode, fast method of putting multiple beads on all at one time.